Hello, my name is Yvette Poplinski. I'm the Director of Financial Services for the City of Peterborough. On November 3rd, 2025, staff presented a draft budget for 2026 to Council, and I'm going to discuss that draft budget in this presentation. In May of this year, the Mayor provided a mayoral decision to staff with direction for preparing the draft 2026 budget. The key items in the decision were to maintain service levels at current 2025 levels, adjusted for inflation, costing adjustments, council-approved changes, and legislative requirements, if any, and to include a 10% increase for police services due to legislative requirements for the police. The draft 2026 budget, as presented to Council on November 3rd, was prepared on this basis and does not include any staff-initiated service level changes, and there are also no new staff position requests. The draft 2026 operating budget, as presented to Council on November 3rd, included $433.7 million of operating gross expenditures. This pie chart illustrates how those funds are allocated among the city departments as well as transfers to outside organizations. The largest portion of the operating budget costs are in the Community Services Department. This department includes social services, fire services, recreation, park, and cultural services, which includes the museum and art gallery, and also included is the library. The draft budget that was presented to Council included a 7.84% increase in the all-inclusive rate. On Monday evening, it was communicated to Council that new information had been received between the printing of the budget book and November 3rd, and that included a reduced benefit cost of totaling $665,000, as well as increased funding from the province of $268,000. These items were adjusted to present to Council on Monday an all-inclusive rate increase of 7.43%. At the same meeting on November 3rd, Council approved funding for shelter services totaling $1,120,000 to come from the 2026 budget. So this is added to the draft budget as presented, and the result is a all-inclusive rate increase of 7.92%. This is broken down into the operating component, which is the operations of the city, the outside organizations, which are funded by the city and operate independently, the capital financing, and the sewer surcharge. Both of these components are used for the capital budget of the city. And these total a 7.92% increase. The increase in the operating component, which is 3.42% of the all-inclusive rate increase, is driven by these factors, the largest being the employee and personnel costs, the next being the housing and homelessness funding that was previously funded from reserve. These items were included in the 2025 budget, so are no change in service levels, but were previously funded from reserve and now funded by taxation. There's a decreased contribution to reserves in 2026, and as well as decreased interest income due to the rates being lowered throughout this year. We've also seen a reduction in rezoning application fees and landfill tipping fees throughout 2025, and we're forecasting that to continue into 2026. We're expecting an increase in insurance costs in 2026, and we're recommending that contingency be increased by $250,000. This contingency will be used for any items that are unforeseen at this point, but that come up during 2026 that we cannot otherwise fund. We are anticipating an increase in transit revenues of just over $1 million and have reviewed the transit budget in detail and found that we can reduce some costs within that budget by $800,000. We're expecting a reduction in fuel expenses for all city vehicles of $177,000. This is a combination of the carbon tax being removed from fuel prices, as well as a change in required needs for fuel. There are some general inflation and other factors, smaller factors, totaling $374,000, and increased OMPF funding, as I mentioned, as well as the additional shelter services approved by council on Monday. And those are all the total drivers of the funding of the operating component of the all-inclusive rate increase. The outside organization component of the all-inclusive rate increase is 1.79%, and these are the organizations that the city funds. There are legislative requirements for the city to provide funding to these organizations, and on November 10th, police will present to council their budget, which includes a 9.8% increase, which is within the 10% that was given by the mayor as a direction to staff. And on November 17th, the County of Peterborough will attend a general committee meeting to present the 2026 paramedic budget. So this all-inclusive rate increase of 7.92% equates to $157.66 per $100,000 of residential assessment. The median assessed value of a residential home is $260,000. So dividing that by $100,000 of assessment gives a factor of 2.6, and that multiplied by $157.66 equals $409.92 annually, or $34.16 per month. I will note that the $260,000 is the assessment value of the median home in Peterborough, as provided by MPAC. This is not related to the real estate market value of homes, and is based on 2020 current value assessment, which is the latest information provided by MPAC. The capital budget totals $140.5 million for 2026, and with this pie chart is illustrated how it's allocated among the city divisions, with the largest going to the infrastructure planning and growth department at $48.58 million. The capital budget is funded by property taxes, debt, reserves, and federal and provincial funding, such as the Canada Community Building Fund, which was previously federal gas tax. To reach this capital budget amount, senior leadership and the budget team reviewed all the projects that were requested by staff and removed over $70 million in order to remain within the funding available for 2026. That $70 million was either deferred to a future year or potentially removed entirely from the budget requirements if it was an annual project. This slide shows the top 20 projects included in the 2026 budget, and you can see the total cost of these 20 projects is $86.4 million. So that's $86.4 million of the total $140.5 million. And these projects, this slide only shows the 2026 costs. An expanded version of this table is available on pages 16 and 17 of the budget book, which provides the total cost of the project as well as future years requirements. So you can see the capital budget includes things like roads works, equipment for the wastewater treatment plant, a runway work at the airport, fleet and equipment replacement, information technology projects, work at the landfill, replacement of buses for transit, some work at the zoo, as well as the trails and cycling networks, and sidewalk reconstruction and Morrow Park, with the largest project being the Peterborough Police Station renovation and expansion. The entire city draft budget book is available on the city's website, and you can also check out the website for the open book budget visualization features at peterborough.ca/budget. So the remaining budget review and approval timetable includes this evening's meeting as of November 5th, as well as an informal drop-in session on November 10th, with general committee meetings on November 10th in the afternoon for outside organizations and for the general public in the evening. On November 17th and 18th, general committee will review the budget book in detail and make recommendations and ask questions of staff. On December 8th, the mayor will table his budget, and it is anticipated that the budget will be adopted on that date. Thank you for your interest in the city budget and the budget process for 2026.